the fact that we we want an aspect of acceptance and uh to show some sort of status, right? We want to show some sort of status in the world, and that's human nature. And so I think that history, for that reason, repeats itself, because whether it's a different time period, the essence of humans and the psychology of humans still remains partly the same. Welcome back to Out of the Box podcast, where Steele and I, your host, get to talk about outside of the box ideas. And today we have a topic about how history repeats itself. And so we wanted to have a conversation about how in history we see different cycles happen again and again. So we're going to kind of delve into that a little bit. And before we actually get started, I want to invite you guys to subscribe to our channel, because Steele and I are committed to continue providing outside of the box content, weekly content for you guys. So please subscribe, hit that bell button so you're notified when we put up new videos. And also throughout the video, if you like our content, please give us a like and also write a comment of what you thought was interesting. Put a timestamp so that way we know what was the content that actually provided the most value to you. So without further ado, Steele, history always repeats itself. That's, I think, one of the lines that we always hear, maybe from our social studies teacher or from another person that we might have heard of. So do you think that's true? Do you think history does repeat itself, or it doesn't?
It certainly seems that way. I mean, on first glance, I personally think I would be the first one to say, yeah, I think it probably does because even if you look at something as limited in history as like the Bible, and I don't mean like limited like in a bad way. I just mean like the Bible represents a certain time length of history in the past. Even if you just look at that text, you see history repeating itself throughout that time period, right? So
Yeah.
and then if you just know about history in general, I mean, how many wars have there been? I think just like common sense tells you like how many genocides have there been? Periods where some leader kind of took over, a dictator took over, or like Hitler, or just different like leaders who had too much power and the wrong ideas and committed genocide either by not giving people resources in their country or just flat out murdering them like Hitler did. So I think that's happened a lot. I mean, a lot of the problems we see in society now that we think are new, turns out a lot of those there's still some problems like that in the past. I mean,
Yeah, there's been
I mean,
pandemics before.
if you go back to
There's
Caesar's time and all that, dude, they were doing just as much messed up stuff back then. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, just looking at it economically, I've heard that almost every 10 years there's some sort of recession happening.
right,
We had that in 2008, beforehand we had that happen too. And, it came a little bit late, but it's also intermixed with the pandemic, but we had a small recession too. Um, and so, history in some shape or form continues to repeat itself, right? And, maybe it's in a different way or in a different presentation,
different
but it seems
culture.
to, yeah, it seems to have the same elements as before, right? We've had the internet boom, right? We had the internet boom, then the social media boom, and now we're seeing an NFT boom. So it's internet one, two, and three, right? That we're
Oh,
seeing
yeah,
like a cycle, right? Then we might have internet four. We have iPhones every year. There's a new iPhone, so you expect something to come out. So there's things in history that we see, like, oh, innovation, how things are
yeah.
presented.
The Industrial Revolution, it spiked in a whole new, like, and then we have the technology revolution now with this, like you said, the cell phone, social media, like
Yeah,
spikes up, goes down, and now the technology spiking up now.
yeah, it's almost like at the start of every century we begin to have you know
a life,
a new technological innovation
yeah,
that
world.
reforms the whole world. Yeah, the industrial revolution, and then the technological revolution. I'm not sure what's going to be in the this upcoming
Yeah,
century.
who knows?
But
Why though? Like, why do you think history repeats itself? Is it human nature?
I think that's what it is. And I was going to mention it a little bit at the beginning, but
Yeah,
I think there's an essence for sure that just it's inherent to humans, and it's also evolved, right? So that's why I say, like, yes, history repeats itself, but it's presented in a different way, because through culture and through beliefs, people change, and start morphing into different, you know uh new ways of thinking, right? But at the end of it, there's that human essence that still remains within it, right? And so that's why I think that history in itself, you know has, throughout history, or we can say more of human history, the human element, right? And so there's always that social aspect. People want to socialize, people want to do it. Now they're doing it more virtually than before. People are dating virtually, unlike before. People are doing more things, playing games, meeting people virtually than before, but it still has that human longing. I should say the human needs that are now being met through different mediums, right? And to some I say, like, yeah, it's unnatural that we're doing it in this format now. But it's what it's evolving into, in a way, right? And it might have some repercussions, it might not. It might have some good things that come out of it too. We're still yet to see more of that. Because a lot of people shame on the fact that, oh, like, it's not as good as it used to be during my days. How some people say, like, my days were much better, where 25 cents got you
that's
a
an
Coke,
example.
and now
That's history repeating itself,
Coca-Colas are $3 or something.
and that's history repeating itself, right? Not with like people saying, "Oh, well, my music was better back in the day," but I bet me and you're gonna say the same thing. And sometimes I even still find myself saying that now, like thinking the music that younger people in my family listen to is not as good, as the music I
Yeah.
listen to now. But that's just like a personal preference, like
Yeah.
like the older people now say, "Oh, well, the music these days is no good," but that's just that.
Yeah, we become more conservative
It's personal
as we grow
preference.
older. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Less
that's just
open-minded.
because they grew up with that music, right? Just like me and you grew up with the music we grew up with. We just like it because it's familiar to us, you know.
Yeah. And then, you know, uh the older cat, you know, gets, out fought by the younger cats, and new lions come to rule, right?
That's a good metaphor.
Using it metaphorically. So, there's always, some the old gets lost or evolves into something new, but there's still that human element, like you said, right? And what makes me think, there's always rise and falls of civilizations. For example, Rome was one of the biggest, empires of, history, but it still, came to be destroyed, you
So
know, fell. Yeah. So it makes me think, like, well, why did it fall? Right. And I think that's something that we should be looking at right now, especially with, countries having, superpower countries right now, United States, Russia, big countries that, you know, can learn from past generations, right? At least to not repeat the same mistakes.
yeah,
Um, and so I think that's something that we can learn from, for sure, because history, whether we prepare for it or not, it's going to repeat. you
and it's
know
like you think by now, after centuries, we learn from our mistakes, but it's like, why haven't we? And maybe it does tie back to human nature.
yeah,
Human nature
or
of
indifference, maybe.
what is human nature, like, because I think a good example of human nature is like, I don't know, like maybe Cain. Cain and Abel's the most extreme example, and that is a metaphor. Well, I'm not saying it's a metaphor like in the Bible, but I mean it could be used as a metaphor for things happening now, because it's about the most. And Jordan Peterson talks about this. I don't want to steal credit, but like talks about how it's like about the most bitter and resentful. It's about resentment building up so much that one brother kills the other brother out of like jealousy and resentment. That can be
Yeah.
applied to, and that does repeat itself. I mean, it repeats itself all the time, like
Yeah.
murders, homicides, crimes of passion, school shootings that have been happening recently. That's
Yeah.
a lot of them people think are tied with resentment. The school shooters are resentful of like society, of other people who have
Yeah.
what he doesn't, what they don't have, mass shootings too. I mean, riots. Sometimes riots are. I'm not trying to like group in the same category, but I'm trying to think of like examples of like resentment with the Cain and Abel story and how you can
Yeah.
apply that with human.
I think like what you're getting at is also the aspect of what it means to be a human, right?
Yeah.
We have social needs. We want to be accepted. We want to feel loved. And when people love us more than the other, maybe we get jealous.
Yeah.
Human things that actually happen. The emotional side, the physical side, the spiritual side. I think those three components are what create a human being, and supplying the needs for each one changes. But I think that's that's something that's necessary in each generation, in each generation that needs to be fulfilled in humans, whether that technology changes, whether the pollution changes, whether we change houses, whether we live in a different country
That's
and
a,
we
yeah,
speak a different language.
you're saying
Those
it
needs.
doesn't matter how much it changes in the culture, we all still have
Yeah.
the
And
culture.
we'll express our needs through the new mediums, right? We want to find someone, then we go to a dating app, or we go to Facebook and we join a Facebook group, and then we meet different people. Or we find different ways to supply for our needs, our human needs, through the mediums that come throughout history, right?
So it seems like what you're getting at, what we're both kind of tapping into, is maybe that human nature, or but we could say that human nature of resentment, of the needs not being fulfilled, could possibly drive the negative parts of history that repeat themselves, like genocide, war, murder. I mean, war often is just about a disagreement on ideas.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of crazy? I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about, because a lot of, and not that's not always the case. Sometimes it's more of a tangible physical conflict, like
Yeah, it's
land, money, or but
people's want of
often the,
power,
yeah,
right?
like some wars are over like religion. So like some of it actually genuinely just comes down to a difference of opinion, a difference of beliefs. So it's kind of fascinating how it can go to that extreme. Like you, it's one thing for me and you to disagree, Jose, about something, right? Of one of our beliefs or something, let's say. But it's interesting because that's not much different from certain, well, not all wars, but some wars that were fought over like religion or something like that, over ideas. It's crazy how like just a disagreement over ideas can literally lead to this massive army versus army thing, a physical thing like that. It's crazy to me,
Yeah,
and
that's interesting, which boggles my mind just because it's inherent. You know, it makes me think like, how can you have so much diversity, but at the same time, so much peace? Because
yeah,
sometimes the diversity is what causes um chaos,
yeah, okay.
right? Because there's so much, that so many variations of I guess people's truth. Then you can say, well, who's true, right? And I think it goes back to our other podcast,
Yeah,
right?
that's,
Where's the
that's
truth?
why
Like, who
that's
has the
why
truth?
yeah, and that's why when I'm saying that, I'm not even trying to take a stance. Like we both
Yeah.
kind of agree that postmodernism is a scary thing, because then truth gets thrown out the door, and I think we agree on that. But I just mean like wars, I guess itself. It's crazy how wars can be like we do need to have truth for sure, and we should fight for truth. But maybe war isn't the. And I'm not even taking a stance on war. Like I have different opinions on war. Like so, I'm not even taking a stance on that at all. I'm just saying like philosophically, like it's interesting observation how like war can like a religious war, for example, could come from just a difference in what people believe is true. I guess you could say it like that. Like I do think we do need to fight for the truth. I agree with you on that. But maybe not in physically like killing each other. On that level. There are some cases when maybe war is inevitable and you can't, like, you have to defend yourself. I'm not
Yeah.
saying we shouldn't defend ourselves if someone's attacking us. So I think it is really complicated. Um, it's really complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of summarize, I don't know if you have any other thoughts about history repeating itself, but um, you know, in essence, human nature will always, make its mark depending on what time period it is. We're always going to want to find love, find people, find, you know, I guess joys in life and stuff like that. And the things that we get excited for now might be different in 10 years, right? We might get excited about getting a digital piece of, you know, artwork or a digital we see it now with video games. Like people get excited about the new clothing that the character has, or things of that sort. So our joys in our the ways we I guess express uh power in the world, right? Or leisure, because sometimes we flex with, oh, having a great car or an amazing house, or amazing job, or whatever. And so the things that we find, I guess, cool in the future might be different, but it still does not defeat the fact that we we want an aspect of acceptance, and uh to show some sort of status, right? We want to show some sort of status in the world, and that's human nature. And so I think that history, for that reason, repeats itself, because whether it's a different time period, the essence of humans and the psychology of humans still remains partly the same.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you just said. The psychology of humans stays the same centuries and centuries later, and that is what drives history repeating itself. 'Cause,
Yeah.
culture can change all it wants to, technology can advance all it wants to, but that's not changing, and that
Yeah.
explains a lot, especially in the
Yeah.
Bible. Because even like
It's
my
definitely.
last thought is like even in the Bible, in the Old Testament, God gives Israel and other uh, try like I don't know groups of culture, groups of people, right? So many second chances, like the whole Old Testament is about society diving into sin, right? Or what they say is bad or wrong or corrupt, and then God trying to save them again, and then it dives right back again, you know, several hundred years or so later, and it's just the whole Old Testament's about that, the rise and fall of man's relationship with God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about, or what's
Yeah.
your final thing on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good observation. I mean, we see uh falls in terms of faith, and then revivals of faith. We see wars, and then peace. Um, there's always an interchange. And so it's just, different time periods. It's the same thing that's happening. I think we're fighting for the same things over and over again. That's why I'm
Right.
boggled to see if there if what we're pushing for, diversity, actually causes peace in the world. Like
Yeah, you're asking that.
like in terms of beliefs, like, because we can be diverse in terms of like race, because even that like sometimes can lead to we saw that with the Nazis, racial persecution, fight like trying to persecute the Jews and stuff like that, those who were not pure breed. And so
Yeah, example of the negative effect, negative side of.
yeah, the negative side, which every time in history, there's how do we know there's not going to be another Hitler in history? How do we know there's not going to be another Stalin, or like,
Look for you. We gotta look for the signs.
so it's people grow up in different environments now, and so it's kind of interesting to see that people in the future, or like or in our midst, that we have people in that realm of I guess um activity, or aptitude. So I think that's what's interesting. Who's
Yeah.
gonna be our next Mother Teresa? Who's gonna be our next, you know, Hitler, or whatever? It's something that history repeats itself. We have new ways of thinking, new humans that are developing, and so yeah, I'm curious to see what comes next.
Yeah. Same.
Sounds good. Well, guys, let us know, what do you think? Does history repeats itself? What do you is there some things that you've noticed that have repeated right now in our time period? We would love to know down below in the comments. And also, if you liked our content, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel to continue receiving more information of our content. So until next time, we will see you.